sharing their experience from tech leaders to tech leaders. This is CTO Talks.
Hello and welcome. This is Marcin Jabłonowski, and in today's CTO Talks episode, I have a pleasure to host Mohit Karanwal, straight from Bay Area, California. Hello, Mohit. Nice to see you.
Same here, Marcin. How are you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good. And I really hope it's going to be even more interesting once we get deeper into the topic we're going to discuss today. Mohit works at HID Global. It should be also quite a known brand for anyone who has anything to do with badges and access control, the physical access control, right? This is where I know the company from. And Mohit, could you tell a few words about what the company does, what's your role in the company, and what do you do on a daily basis?
Sure. So HID is a big brand and is part of the big organization, which is ASA Abloy. And I am under one of the BUs underneath HID, which is called IAMs, and one of the products, which is called Safe, which came from a startup that I was part of called Quantum Secure, and we became part of HID as part of the acquisition. I had product engineering over here based out of Fremont. I had that team who takes care of the product and from the engineering side of the house. So that's
cool. All right, so we are going to discuss with Mohit something to leverage his experience and to share with others. And I know that Mohit has some great insights on what effective leadership is. So basically, this is something we would like to share with others. So maybe, Mohit, can you share, based on your past experience, what do you think are the key components of the effective leadership?
Yeah, so there can be many key components of effective leadership, and everybody, would have their own opinion based on what they do, what their background, and what they have learned. From my standpoint, I think there are three things for me, which I consider as a key component, at least for me, right? And the first one starts with being totally authentic, right? Purposefully authentic. And what that really means is that, authentication should reflect on whatever you do, in the company, in the product, with the team or cross teams or whatever. It's not something that you can fake, right? It can be easily spotted. So it's very, very important, extremely important, right? Because that's what builds trust, from the team and from your peers and everything, which is the second point from a key component of the effective leadership. And trust is something that you have to have, right? Whether it's with your team or cross team or the other functions in the business or whatever, right? They have to trust you and you have to trust them, right? On anything or whatever you guys are doing, any initiative, big or small, whether it's a small company or startup or a big company, that's at the foundation level. And then the third thing I would say is the wellness of the employees. That's a very important thing. Obviously, post-COVID and everything, the environment changed, work environment changed and everything, that triggered a lot of that thought process. There used to be companies earlier who used to focus a lot on that, but I think it really triggered that way post-COVID, where all the companies realized that, hey, this is a key component and you really have to take care of your employees. And it's just not physical health, obviously. It is mental health also. And the great thing about mental health is that, you have programs and everything that you can easily, introduce in your companies, and your employees can be part of that program, and they can live or be pretty healthy from a mental perspective. And there is a direct relationship between that and productivity, as you would know. You can map it directly to your EBIT if you can. And a lot of companies in the Bay Area, they do it. They run programs like Google, and I know a lot of companies. In fact, we are talking in HID about expanding that and how we can have those employees part of that. So from my perspective, and again, this is just me, I would say these are the three top components when it comes to leadership.
And in terms of authenticity, all right, like, what does it really mean? Yeah, is it like that you do things that you believe in and you just follow them, but or something else? Yeah, what this is in practice? Yeah, well, how does it work in the daily life?
Yeah, no, good question. So from I would say like anything you do, big or small, or anything you plan according to like what the north star of the company is, like whether, and again, it is like whether it's a small company or big company, right? You absolutely have to have like a very clear vision, very openly discussing that or having that true vision getting understood, and sharing your personal hopes with the team, saying that, hey, we really want to get to that North Star. We really want to achieve that. That's like just one example. And again, I don't mean to say to cross like personal boundaries. You have to have personal boundaries at the leadership, like with the team, and when you are sharing anything on everything, right? Certain things you can share, obviously. Certain things you have to wait for the right time. But those are the few examples. But on a daily basis, anything. You plan something, you tell the team something. You might not know something today, but you should not be faking it or should not be saying, hey, oh, maybe this is X, it turns out to be Y. And over the period of time, right, people understand that, hey, where you're coming from, whether you're coming from being extremely authentic or you're coming from where you just want to say the right thing so that at that moment in time, people feel right or they get, the right answers, what you want them to hear. But that should not be the case, right?
And how about, so I think it all works really well when you understand the decision, you know where the North Star is. And how about the situation, and this is quite common, especially in bigger organizations, where you are part of a middle management and there are decisions that happen somewhere up there, and you're just an executor or like a communicator of those, yeah? And very often, and I think it's also happening even now, right, that things are beyond your control, but you still need to execute it. Like, I think now many companies are in this process of layoffs and things like that. So how do you deal with that? How do you remain authentic in such kind of situations? Yeah, when you don't have the whole background, you don't know why certain decisions were made. You still need to pass them on and execute, even though if you don't agree with them.
Yeah. No, those are hard things. Fortunately, we have not had that much of situation within HID. But I understand, business has to run and business has to do the right thing. And obviously, from a leadership perspective, whatever that decision that has to be passed down and you have to execute, you have to be part of that. And that's what makes you part of the leadership team. And again, at least what I've seen in the companies that I work with, fortunately, there was a lot of transparency between the higher ups that I had, right? And if we planned something or something came up and if we had to execute something, what was the reason behind it, right? So that transparency has been obviously there, at least in my case, like on my experience. I was telling you, I was part of like a startup that, we started like back in 2004 and, I knew the founders and everything. And we ran that operation for like quite a few years. And obviously we went through the whole phase of from a startup, like 3-4 employees to like 120, I guess, at the time of acquisition. You can imagine the decisions that you would have to take in all those years at various times, right? Again, the point I'm trying to make is it is important to have that transparency, and that once you have the transparency, whatever you need to deliver to your team, that will automatically come authentically, right? And you don't have to paint the picture. Again, there is a choice of words in terms of what you can share at certain point in time and what you cannot. So you obviously have to be mindful of that. But what I've tried to do is try to be very transparent. This is what I know as of today, and this is the reason why we're doing this. Whatever it is. I mean, I'm not talking about just layoffs. I'm talking about any decisions, right? Pivoting anything, going in a decision to go in a different direction or trying certain things, experiment new initiatives. It might not look like, oh, that's probably a long road and we're going to spend like X amount of dollars on that. Why are we doing it? But no, share very openly with the team and the pairs and everything. Hey, this is why we're doing it, right? And there was no harm in trying. But yeah, coming back to the point, again, it goes back to the first key component of being authentic and as much as you can.
Okay, and how about trust? I think this is something that is in almost every episode of CTO Talks, and we talk a lot about this. I had a huge, a long conversation about trust with Hassan Lashgar and Simin Sulary. What is trust in your opinion? Yeah, and whether is it something you have by default or is it something you earn over time?
No, you earn it over time. You cannot have it default. You cannot show as a person and sit in front of the team and expect that they trust you. It takes time. And I think it goes both ways because you have to trust the team first. Only then the team will trust you, right? It's not that telling them to do something. It's like showing them the way and let them take the decision, let them go there. Obviously, you will be overlooking at the shoulders, right? Making sure that, whichever direction or whatever decisions they're taking, big or small, I mean, that's the right decision. But again, to the point of trust, I know it gets thrown, that word, trust gets thrown like very easily, carelessly, I would say. But it has a very deep meaning, very, very deep meaning. So yeah, you got to prove yourself first to make sure that the team starts trusting you. And that comes all of these things, like the way you talk and the authenticity that you're talking about, delivering like the message or whatever, or just sitting with them and sharing, how you feel about certain things as a leader, or, whatever the goals are or whatever you want to achieve along with the team. And that's what helps building the trust. But yeah, it can take a lot of time, from months to years sometimes. It depends.
Okay, and how do you know that you're actually doing an effective leadership? Yeah, is there a KPI or some kind of metrics? Yeah, so basically, if I were, a leader and I was trying to apply the principles you've just mentioned, yeah, how do I know whether I'm doing things properly or not?
Yeah, you have to build your own AI personal agent on GPT to keep that watch on yourself. Like, hey, are you right? Oh no, you said these many things. Probably they don't align with you. Yeah. No, jokes apart. I think it all, you have to be pretty open in terms of understanding and learning on a day-to-day basis. The conversations that you're having with the team, the responses that you're getting from the team, from your leadership, from your peers, the conversations that you're having or you had in the day. I think, not that I do this every day, but if something happens and I try to kind of reflect back, saying that, hey, we had that discussion, how did it go, right? Just a reflection, right? I think you learn that how did it go, and if you try to say something from your perspective, how it is received from the other side, because there are two perspectives, right? And so that reflection helps a lot. And one of the things that, again, it goes back to continuous learning, is that, you got to read things about this. You need to continuously sharpen these skills. It's not that, I learned this thing, or I went through an article and I jotted all the points and I think I'm going to do the right things. No, you got to revisit that. You got to expand that knowledge. You got to continue to learn those skills, like more skills. And then obviously, and there's too much of, pods and TED Talks and things to learn. And I do that a lot, like in various areas. So they all kind of help. And think that there is a very straightforward KPI that tells you, that are you doing the right thing or not doing the right thing? But again, it gets all reflected from how you are executing as a leader and along with the team and where you are headed. So that's what I would say. I don't know if there is an easy way to know.
All right. What do you think? Would there be a difference in how you approach, your leadership style whether you're in a small startup or a scale up, or in a big brand, huge company?
Yeah. So let's start with vision. I think it's a very important thing, whether you are part of a startup or you're part of a big organization, the vision has to be very clear, right? And again, going back to what we're talking about, what's your true North Star? From a startup perspective, the vision might come with a lot of uncertainties and big risks and everything, but you got to execute upon that, right? And there are tons of examples, like, especially in the Bay Area and like all around the world, where the companies had to take like very hard decisions at a certain point in time. And some of them broke it or broke the company, but most of the time, or I don't know most of the time, but sometimes those are the turning points or the pivoting points of the company that really put them on the rails, and then they just took off. So in a big company, whatever you do and however you execute on that vision, it might not come with such a huge impact, but you got to be very mindful in terms of like what your spend is and how you're monitoring that spend on whatever initiative you're doing. But yeah, the clarity in the vision has to be there, and that applies to both. There is no difference on like whether you work for a small company, big company, or whatever. You might in a startup, let's say, you might start with something, but what market tells you or how you learn, you might have to pivot very fast, right? So that loop is pretty fast. In a big company, that might be a little bit slower because obviously there is a whole process. There are different teams, from where you basically receive that inputs and you put all those things together. In a startup, you cannot afford that. Startup, you have to take decisions, like instant decision, and you have to trust again your team at whichever level they are, that they are equipped with the skills and they understand and they are able to take those decisions, because you cannot be everywhere, right? So I think that's the first thing. Second thing I would say is the process. There is a little bit of difference in that process. In a big company, because there are like multiple BUs and the BAs, right? There's a whole process which is established, and you got to follow that process, right? Very diligently. Sometimes you might feel that, hey, this is a little bit slow, but no, right? It is effective. That's the reason why it is in the first place, right? You cannot expect that delay, or you cannot afford that delay, or you cannot afford those set of processes, like if you are a startup in a growth stage. So that's the big difference over there. And I've seen both the worlds, and that's why I can talk about it. And again, this is purely from my perspective, right? These might be different, like for other people. So that's another thing. And the third thing I would say is decision making. Again, very, very important thing. In a startup, like, it is extremely important, like what decisions you're taking at what point in time, right? Every dollar spent counts, right? So that's another thing. Again, I would say those are the three top things, and there might be more, but those would be the things. And again, when it comes to whether it's like a startup or a big company, your judgment is extremely important, right? Because good judgment comes from experience, and experience is often a result of bad judgments, right? Or bad decisions that you've made over a period of time, right? And that's how you learn. That's how you become experienced, and then that's what feeds your decisions.
Yeah, this is one of the visions behind this show, yeah? To share all the bad decisions so that others can avoid them.
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
Yeah, and like in terms of the role or the personal skills a leader needs to have in both of these worlds, what would you say are those, yeah?
The personal skills?
Personal or any other skills, or, personality-wise.
Yeah, there are all these different, areas where you can continue to develop your skills. I mean, if you go to LinkedIn, there is tons of that, right? How to be emotionally intelligent, and, how to deal with a lot of these things. I mean, whether you take from a mindfulness perspective or you take purely from soft skills perspective, there's a very thin line, and they both are kind of aligned in terms of, like, how you should be. or how you should be looking at the world, or certain things. And those are small things, like, teaches you how not to be reactive and look at from a different perspective. Whatever conversation you're having, hard conversations, right? Or, within the team or outside the team. And not every time things are right. Sometimes you do have to do those hard conversations, and sometimes with the customers. But being open to continue to learn a lot of that stuff, right, is extremely, extremely important. Like I said, it's not something we were talking about a little bit earlier, that these skills, soft skills, so to speak, is not something that you go through once and then you're like, hey, oh, I'm good with that, I learned that. Now you got to revisit. Lot many times I've seen this, at least with me, that I would go through some content, I will take notes and everything, whether it's like a pod, something who's teaching some skills or something, or a LinkedIn course or something on effective leadership or whatever. First time I went through it, I was able to only take like few things. Next time, let's say later, I was like, oh, I missed something, and I will make updates to that. And I try to write a lot, and that's just my way of like consuming things. But I take notes and everything. I'm not taking notes, like I would barely remember like 20%, 30% of whatever I heard. So keep improvising on it and what I wrote earlier. And then again, let's say if I went through similar content on the same subject, but let's say from a different part, or a different wherever it came from, I try to mix them together and just have that one wherever I'm taking notes, like mostly electronically, and I keep updating that. Quite a few times, and this is going to sound funny a little bit. Sometimes I would just think through, something would trigger, and I would just open my notes and I would just go through it. Think that, hey, okay, and trust me on this. You go through that, you immediately reflect few of the things in the past day or today or early in the day. Oh, that's what happened. Maybe I should have done this. Oh, that's a self-check. Oh, next time is like, oh, this is not going to be more reactive. I'm going to be more like staying back and just give my listening ears and everything more, than I did yesterday or whatever. It helps a lot. It seriously helps a lot. Yeah. There are like multiple areas around this. And again, I would say there is tons of stuff like, online, free, like for leaders and people who are on the road to leadership, right, to go through and understand and develop those skills.
Okay, so there's one huge trend nowadays, a hype even, that many leaders need to face, and need to face also the expectations of their boards, of their shareholders. And this is AI, right? AI is like a big thing nowadays due to popularity of ChatGPT. And I know it's also one of your biggest interests. What are the biggest trends in AI and machine learning at the moment, in your opinion, and something that is really important to any kind of IT executives and leaders?
Yeah. Well, it's not a hype anymore. It's like a real thing. We are living that life now, right? And it's been around for quite a few years. I think if I was sitting like 4 years back, 3 years back, I would have been in that monitoring state of like, hey, let's see where this goes. But the way it has evolved, or the speed, like that change, or that it has come through, and especially GPT and that release, kind of shook the world about like, hey, it's not in the future, it's right here, right? So it is very much here, and when you look at trends, like health and medicine is a huge area, right? You look at diagnostics, you look at personalized treatment, you look at drug discoveries, you look at robotic surgeries. These are happening right now as they speak, right? AlphaFold database, right? It has 200 million protein structures already. I think that's probably all the protein structure that we know so far from a science perspective, which really translates to that it can predict the protein 3D structure, right, from its amino acid and the sequences. In simple words, like you can have a cure for cancer much in advance before your protein starts going bad, and detection of that. You can have cure for Alzheimer's much before it comes to the stage where you see people as of today. The same goes with Parkinson's disease. Same goes with the other things. So these are pretty darn profound systems or the database or, whatever we have developed in terms of, how this is helping and this is going to help humanity. The other thing is like we've been seeing it for a while is the autonomous vehicles, right? That's another trend. When we talk about Tesla, talk about Waymo, we talk about whatever. I mean, Tesla is pretty old in terms of the data that they have because they've been running on the road for a long time. And I think they have the largest amount of data in terms of autonomous vehicles. And we see that running. We've been seeing that running over here in Bay Area for a long time. And Waymo running, there's no driver. It's like, hey, where's the driver? There's no driver. And that is just running, collecting data. Which is the full FSD. I think it is in the final stage, and Tesla and Elon has been like very vocal about it. They're just going through the things that they have to. One of the things I'll share about autonomous vehicles, and people debate about it, like, hey, is it ready, or is it going to be good, or it's not going to be good? I just learned this recently. 70% of the accidents, at least in US, happens, because the driver is under influence. And I was amazed to find out, like, really? And this is my insurance company telling me, and we were having a conversation. And immediately it's like, hey, how good the autonomous vehicles is going to be, right? You do try to get in the car, the camera is detected. Hey, you don't look right. Get on the side seat, let me take over, right? But yeah, that's here. It's not that's happening as we speak, right?
Yeah, so I fully agree. And there is also the other side of the coin, which is like a big elephant in the room, AI ethics. Yeah? So a few days ago, European Union agreed on an AI Act, so the first regulations around using AI. I know that it's still not there in the US, but there are some discussions already happening for some quite time already. What do you think is the right way to approach potential misuse of AI? And this is very even more problematic in the cases you provided, like medicine, autonomous vehicles. Yeah, when an accident happens, who's responsible for the accident, right? If it was caused by an autonomous vehicle.
Actually, we just had that incident in SFO like a month back. I don't know which company was it, but there was a car and and a lady came underneath that car, and the whole thing was that, hey, the car took the right decision, but something else happened. I don't remember the details, but that's exactly what happened. So yeah, AI ethics and regulations, some people have been pretty vocal about it, and we've been talking about this for years. Elon has been pretty vocal for almost 10 years. He's pretty vocal about the bigger thing, which is the AGI, which is a whole different thing to talk about. But at least what we have as of today, from an ethics perspective, right? Fairness, transparency, safety, accountability, like you're talking about, these are pretty important things, and you have to have regulations around it. Like, who knows, what you're building or what a company has in the LLM and whatever the large language model, basically. And when you ask it to do something, or even when it is doing something and you don't know, how do you know that it's doing the right thing? And so the big question right now is how do you even start to measure it? So there's a lot to uncover. There's a lot of, and I don't think so many people understand this. And these are the people who are in the thick of things, including people like Sam Altman, from OpenAI. He was the guy who went to the regulators and was like, hey, we need something like this, right? So there is no disagreement on that. But the big question is, at least I have not read or seen or heard so far, hey, this is the starting point. I think everybody's in that discovery mode, hey, how do we even bring that regulation, right? At what point? Sorry, not at what point, at what data point, in fact. What do you want to be seeing in your language models when you're training, or what kind of data set before you try to feed it? You should look into and make sure that it doesn't have in the data, because just whatever data is going, it will train that model. And then you got to be careful about the tools and everything that we have. I mean, deepfakes have been there for a while. Images and all of that videos, they are pretty good. And I've seen them floating around. They made one of Tom Cruise and they made one of Obama giving a speech. You have to be looking very carefully and hearing very carefully, like to make a difference. So that can have a very profound negative effect. If you think about it, there is always a problem of like, the authenticity of the data as of today in terms of news or whatever. Like, how do we even make sure that it's authentic, right? Misinformation. When it comes to deepfakes and this thing, that's like the next level. That's like, so yeah, large scale misinformation. And if you really go more deep, think about cyber attacks and everything, it's like common thing. Large scale sophisticated cyber attacks, that's another huge problem. And the way things are evolving and with GPT, and they gave like the whole, and I'm not trying to point out that GPT is just an example. They gave like a whole platform. Like last week they had the tech conference, and now you can train your own agent on top of GPT, right? Think about like, the auto GPTs that you can train to try to figure out, hey, this is the end goal, and try to figure out how to get there. And it can spin the task and spin the threads, can spin the GPTs and spin all of those stuff, and then, do those not so good things. So yeah, extremely important.
And you briefly mentioned about AGI, and could you please explain to the viewers, because maybe it's not, very commonly spread term so far. Could you explain what it is and what it means, basically?
Yeah, AGI, I mean, in literal terms, really, artificial general intelligence. And if I have to put it very simply, it's like one of those things you've seen in those old movies, like the iRobot, that came 20, 30 years ago, like, where the robot or the program, I would say, has the capability to take its own decision. And there is no stopping point, basically. And whatever it starts believing, it starts executing towards that. And you don't know, or you won't know. In simple terms, that's what it is. And we can, I don't want to take some really nasty bad examples, but what if like one of these agents like come to the point where they understand, oh, humans are causing XYZ things, and they should not be, right? What's the fix for that? Hey, eliminate humans. They're causing harm to the planet, maybe. I don't know. I'm just taking an example. So it's a pretty broad thing. A lot of people have been pretty vocal about it. I'm just giving secondhand knowledge, like what I've learned from these people, hearing, talking, some of the talks, listening to a lot of powers. But it's a real thing. And in fact, again, not to try to point few things, but certain recent events that has happened in the last 3 weeks, just 3 weeks, they kind of tried to speculate, like, I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory or one, like, hey, maybe we are too close to the AGI and that's why some of that happened, right? And then we only know what we know. Yeah, so that's
scary. So how can the humankind prepare for this? Yeah, because it's already here. The Skynet is here. So how can we prepare, or what actions should we take as a human species?
Honestly, I'm not sure if I'm equipped to give the right answer.
In your opinion, yeah, it's all about your personal opinions.
Yeah. I think you have to be very open in terms of understanding to the level of like what's going around, first of all. Or maybe let me take a step back. I think let's begin from an understanding that this is not going to go away. There is nothing that's going to reverse the clock and say that
no turning back, basically.
Turning back. There's no turning back. It's here. It's going to be here, right? Because of all the right reasons, right? So from a long-term perspective, the net is going to be good for sure. First of all, let me start with that. But not everything is going to be good. And we just took some examples of like, what are the problems that we know as of today, right? So there is like known, but there is obviously going to be known unknown as of today. and then goes to be unknown. We don't know what we don't know, where this can go. So how do we prep yourself? I think from a being very mindful in terms of like what's really happening and like what are the kind of tools, and not everybody would have that insight unless you are associated with technology and you can be pretty close to kind of looking at this. But it doesn't mean that, you won't learn what's going on. But just keep an open eye in terms of like, from a privacy perspective, from like, how your, where your data is and how it can be misused or whatever you're looking at in a very simple way, right? Like when you're looking at internet, like give it a second thought before you react or feel like, hey, this is authentic, right? Always, take a step back on that. I think all these leaders, what they're trying to do in terms of regulations or coming closer together, and there's a lot of discussions in that cohort basically about, they do realize, the problem and everything. I don't, because I read and it gets covered sometimes, or, by the media, or you'll see like, these posts coming like on Twitter, whether it's like Elon or whether like whoever, and they'll share all of these things. I think there is a movement in terms of, yes, how you can prep yourself and what as leaders in that particular field they would be doing or they are trying to do. Not everybody is on the same page, right? But in terms of working together, as understandable. But you got to be very mindful. You got to be very careful on things, and just hope that. Well, I don't want to sound negative using that word hope. Again, like I said, the net is going to be good, but obviously it's going to come, with its own challenges, because the biggest thing is the societal change, and the adoption of it. And it's like going back to the moment where, let's say, the first iPhone was introduced, right? There was a huge change between BlackBerry and the iPhone, right? So that was a moment of like, oh, what is it? And then we were all fascinated and everything and all. Fast forward today, every year there's a new iPhone, and then we're like, this is good. So that's exactly how technology trends happen, and AI is just one of those things. So yes, we are talking about it. There is a lot of discussion around ethics, regulations, and stuff. But there was going to be a point in time where we're going to be, this is nothing. All right, it's just the next version. It's just the next version. But that first change of adoption from a societal perspective and understanding, like, where do you belong or where do you fit in, right, in the whole scheme of things, I think it's important for everyone to understand that.
Okay, let's slightly change the topic. You mentioned about mental health, especially after COVID pandemic broke out. And as we had our initial conversation, you mentioned that there is this big buzzword all over the place in Silicon Valley nowadays, which is mindfulness. Yeah, and I won't say that I don't know the term. My wife is very much up for this. And maybe you, as a technologist, how would you define mindfulness? Yeah, and the value it gives, or maybe it doesn't give any. Yeah, but maybe you could elaborate on what it is and how it helps, or how can it help leaders? Yeah, to do better at their jobs.
Yeah, that's a whole dedicated podcast actually to that subject. So if we have to look at mindfulness in simple terms, it is just a practice of being fully present at the moment, right? Being aware and being available at this moment. Like, I'm having this conversation with you, right? I'm fully present from here. I'm fully present here, right? Having this conversation. It's a non-judgmental awareness that arises from consciously attending at the present moment, I would say, right? In very simple words, again, I'm going to repeat this a second time, but there is a huge importance in that. Fully aware as of right now, and there are literally books written on this, right? You have to be pretty present. Uh, it, it is. I have gone through this process. When I tried to adopt mindfulness and learn few things and started practicing a few years back. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So listen, yeah, I mean, from my perspective, when I became a leader, let's say the kind of job I was doing and the type of tasks I've been doing, okay, it switched from like something I could, as a developer, I could focus for hours on and have no distractions or work on one thing for multiple hours, yeah. And now I have like tons of little tasks to manage and they constantly change. Yeah, it's like I could even not plan my day and it would be filled with various duties. Yeah, and it's for me it's incredibly interesting. Yeah, how you can easily focus on one thing at a time and not think about all the 1,000 things you get in your backlog, yeah? Because this is what it's all about, yeah? And the other thing is we are constantly connected, yeah? So we are available on WhatsApp, Signal, whatever, Teams. And on top of the tasks we have on our backlog, there is a number of interruptions, yeah? Ad hoc queries. How do you deal with that? Or how do you achieve this state where you can manage this in such a way that's not frustrating for you or for your coworkers or your family?
Yeah. No, there are both external and internal things that will affect your or try to distract you, right? External is obviously what you're talking about. We are connected, we get messages, whether it's like WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever, LinkedIn, whatever, right? But there are internal distractions also, which is like the thoughts running in your head, right? And again, you plan something. Let's say I plan like a whole calendar of my day. I was like, hey, these 2 hours are dedicated on X, these 2 hours are dedicated on Y, and this thing, something I have a work call like that I have to take, and then I'm going to spend a certain time. When you allocate those hours, right, how focused you are and how aware or present you are, right, doing those things. Because most of the time what we do, and I used to do it a lot, and I still do it, not that, after these years of practice, like, I'm perfectly like, aware and I'm doing 100% like, or being there like, at that moment 100%. But the thoughts are running in their head, like something happened and just be there, right? Or there's an upcoming meeting and you're trying to focus on this, but your head is constantly telling you, hey, prep for that. Oh, what are you going to talk about? Oh, there's a hot topic. Oh, there's like a customer, screaming at you, right? Right? How do you deal with that? And it all boils down to practice. There are tools and techniques, right? Meditation is one thing. Breathing exercise is the whole other thing. If you talk about meditation, there is silent meditation, you call it in simple words. There is guided meditation, basically just trying to align your thoughts, just trying to, not have those 1,000 thoughts running in your head. And again, there's a number, like there's like 50,000, 60,000 things that we think about in a day. 50, 60,000. I don't know how that measured it, but that's the number. And you cannot stop it. That's how the brain functions. You cannot say, hey, I'm going to stop, not think anything. No, that's not possible. But how do you basically pay attention to not those thoughts, but something else, maybe your breathing? And that's one of the very common techniques. You just breathe in and breathe out, and you focus on your breath. And you're watching yourself where the breath is going. That's a start. That's a good start. It's a very easy start, I would say. Most of the time people think, oh, I cannot meditate, I cannot think, I cannot sit like for a minute or 2 minutes, but it's like a muscle that you develop, right? Like you never went to the gym, you go to the first time, you're like, I cannot lift these weights. Yes, of course, first stage you cannot, right? But you try with a smaller one, you try with like 10 pounds, and then you add like 15, then 20, 25, and then eventually like in a couple of months, 3 months, 4 months, you're going to see the muscle coming up, and it's like muscle building. And that's what the muscle is in our brain, right?
Do you think anyone can learn meditating?
Oh, everybody, anybody. And there are, so we just have a conversation like one of the friends, and there are different forms of meditations, right? One is obviously, at least for me, is like allocating time in the morning, and that's why I wake up generally wake up in the morning, because I feel that's like the Zen time, peaceful time when I get a lot of insights and everything. That's one type of meditation, right? Whether you're doing guided or you do breathe. People go in meditative state and they don't know, because that's just part of them. And that's like, let's say somebody plays music, right? Somebody plays guitar and they're just playing guitar and everything, and they're enjoying and they're deep into that. That's a meditative state, right? It's not that, hey, they're just playing an instrument. And I was just like, over the weekend, we were at a place, and the husband, wife, and the wife is too much into like all of this stuff, like meditation and things and stuff, allocate time, 2 hours to do this, 1 hour to do breathing and everything, and then for years. And the husband's like, I cannot meditate. And then we were just sitting over there, and I was like, yeah, that's okay. And we were just having a conversation, and then turns out to be that he's a singer. And he comes in, and his wife is like, hey, and so that it's like a group, it's like a setting, and he starts singing, and he goes deep into that state, and I'm looking at him, and I'm watching him and his face, and then when everything happened, I was like, hey, who said that you're not meditating? It's like, what do you mean? I was like, you went into that meditative state while you were singing, right? So there are various ways to kind of, be in that state. And it's just that state of your brain, like, alpha, beta, gamma wave, like, how you trigger it. And that's pretty much it. So point I'm trying to make is like, knowingly or unknowingly, I think every person goes into that meditative state every single day. Every single day. You just don't know, or you don't realize it, right? But yeah, I think it is very helpful to allocate some time to sit in silence and then kind of just, have the focus. There's a lot of alignment that happens. There's a lot of clarity that you would start noticing once you start practicing it. And with me, like, I started the practice like, I think 5 years ago. And again, it's like my wife introduced to me. She does a lot of other things like around this area. And initially she was like, hey, you got to look into this. And I was like, hey, I don't have time. I'm pretty busy. And like, I don't have time for this stuff. You're doing it. It's good for you. And somehow it started, and I started connecting the dots between what, let's say, the ancient cultures and the Eastern cultures and all of those things were teaching, and then modern science, and there was a clear relationship, and that got me curious. And I was like, what are these neuroscientists talking about? And I started on that, and I started practicing. As I started practicing, I got more curious about it. And my curiosity came from both the things, what I was feeling, and then what I was reading, right? From a science perspective, on how it is helpful. I'm like, hey, the ancients knew about something. That's why these practices.
They just felt it. Yeah, it's like
I don't know.
Probably
like,
they could feel the difference.
Yeah, and the one of the thing is like, and breath work is one of those like part of this entire mindfulness and breathing techniques. In most of the cultures, you had this, right? Way back, right? You look at like, let's say, yogic breathing, which was like pretty big thing, like in the Indian culture. You look at Taoist and Buddhism in the Chinese Eastern culture, and you had, that technique. Qigong is like one of the things. Zen breathing in Japanese is another thing. Shamanic breathing is another thing. In Islam, there's like Sufi breathing, and there's a more modern breathing. It's called the holotropic breathing. So pretty famous right here in Monterey, the center. The guy who I think he started that in 70s, and you just breathe so hard that you go into that state, and you're like what happened? I breathe every day, but what happened just now, right? Russians had their own way, and the African tribes had their own way of breathing. So different parts of the world, they knew the stuff somehow. We don't know, but we see that it was there in all the cultures. Whether they learned it over the period of time, like 7,000 years or whatever, humans had to kind of find this. But yeah, it's pretty awesome and pretty helpful. So yes, coming back to your original question in terms of in the work culture and the corporates, how it is helpful. It is pretty helpful, right? From lowering down your stress perspective, from again coming back to the point on the focus, like you are aware you're doing certain things, how well focused you are, doing that thing, right? Uh, uh, and again, that's the reason why a lot of people, corporates over here, are running those programs, right? There was a direct relationship we were talking about like earlier in the pod. There was a direct relationship you can line down between like teams who practice mindfulness and everything, and the productivity increase over the period of time. And that's why corporates like jumped on this, like, hey, this is not to be ignored. And then there are some corporates like who have this program. There are other like Mark Benioff in Salesforce. He's like too deep into this. Like, hey, no, this is not an optional thing.
Are you also implementing this at HID Global?
Yes, there is something over there already, and then we're trying to expand. And I was just having a conversation with the HR, and let's see where it goes. But obviously, we are looking into this on how we can do this. You see? Yeah.
Okay, so next time probably we can talk about the results of this initiative. Maybe you can share some performance improvements you did. But slowly wrapping up. Are you still there, Mohit?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. If you were to give 3 pieces of advice to our target audience, summing up everything we've discussed today. So basically, IT leaders, how to become better leaders. What would be the 3 things?
You said what would be the 3 things?
3 things, pieces of advice on how to become a better leader.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from my experience, and we touched upon that, during the course of this pod. I think a couple of things. One thing is the continuous learning, and be open to explore, be open to learn from others, right? Be open or be curious to find out, hey, there is something going on or something you're hearing. Let me read about it a little bit, right? Don't try to shut it down just because of some of the preconceived notion or like, your old programming of, and again, it depends upon where you come from, like how you grew, and then, all the background and everything. There's like a whole lot of variation. Every person is different. But just being open for learning, to understand, to learn different perspectives and everything. I think that's a start. And again, it's a start, but it's a continuous thing to kind of be mindful of and continue to improve just within these 2 things. And automatically, like, it will bring you or bump you into like multiple things. Your skills are going to get improved, right? Your way how you look at your life, and how you work with the team, your peers and everything, all of that going to get improved, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to spend like 2 hours in the morning and like, follow meditation, mindfulness or whatever. No, it doesn't mean that. But certain things to realize, the choice of words to use, the phrases to use. In fact, there's a whole science behind the words we speak, right? And if we are speaking mostly negative words, how our brain perceives that and how does it get programmed, and then how it can affect you in future discussions or when you're trying to deliver. It's a whole vicious circle. It's like there is a whole science behind it. So, in an easy way, people say like, hey, say positive things, say nice things, and say, but like, how does it affect you? Once you understand that, your brain registers, oh, that's what's going on, right? That's why I have to avoid saying negative things. So you can start with those small things and everything, and you will see like profound difference, right, in the way you execute and your relationship with the world and vice versa. So be open to learn, like, be open
to watch CTO talks.
And yeah, exactly. That's why you're doing this, right?
If you want to learn, of course.
Exactly. Hear the parts, hear different perspectives of people, right? Just
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Mohit, it's been a pleasure. Many thanks for accepting the invitation and sharing your incredibly interesting experience. I hope we get to talk again about the results of the experiment. Maybe I shouldn't call it like this, but the initiative with meditation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you for the time, Mars, and it was a pleasure. Like, I had a good conversation, I have to say. So thank you so much for the time.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
All right, you take care. Bye-bye.
Sharing their experience from tech leaders to tech leaders. This is CTO Talks.